What's good, my man of society? It is your host with the most, Shadow Loke, back at you with another video. Make sure you guys like, comment, and are subscribed to the channel. It's absolutely free. That is how you help my channel get into the algorithm. It don't cost nothing. All you gotta do is tap on the subscribe and the like. I'll highly appreciate it. Now, what I wanted to get into was actually a subject that has been brought to my attention by several individuals, including Mr. Pasa, right? And it's a topic that I also seen Sunny Boy from the Streets Ain't Loyal. Go subscribe to Sunny Boy's channel. He spoke about this too, right? It's an interesting topic, right? Which was about Asians, right? Like in Japan and, Philippines and other areas, right? Quote unquote, being a part of the Chicano culture, right? Or representing the Chicano culture. I guess you could say giving their explanation to what I think they thought Chicano was, right? But like Sunny Boy has said in his channel, that's not the Chicano culture. That's the gangster culture. Flannels, Cortezes, Ben Davis. That's not Chicano. That's gangster, right? Supposedly, what's gangster according to, society, right? But that's essentially what they're paying homage to. The gangsterism, not the Chicanoism, because Chicano and gangster is not the same thing. Even though you have gangsters that are Chicano, it's not a gangster thing. It has nothing to do with the gangster world or nothing like that, right? All these people are Chicano. You know what I mean? Cesar Chavez, Brown Berets, all the people that were protesting and fighting for rights for Latinos, Mexicanos, Hondureños, Salvadoreños, Guatemaltecos, and everybody else, right? It was the unity of these individuals, right? And speaking of the injustice, and speaking about equal rights and equal education, right? And getting rid of segregation and all of that, right? Because all of this was, factors in here in America, right? The mistreatment towards raza in general, not just blacks, right? But also, the raza minorities. And, it was something that, people were out there pushing, right? And fighting for, and really fighting, right? Because, some people didn't even know how they were going to pay their rents or how they're going to put food on the table, right? When they're doing the walkouts and the marches, right? Because now they don't have no work, right? And it's not like they have a bank account full of all kinds of money, right? So this was critical, for these individuals, right? Most of them were risking it all, And I know people are out there saying that Chicanos is Mexican Americans and all that, but one thing that people don't understand is that when these people were out there marching, it wasn't only Mexicanos, though, but a mixture and combination of a bunch of Latinos. Because America seen us all the same. You can't tell the difference between a Salvadorian and Mexican. They seen us as all illegal and immigrants and the same, right? So these individuals, we all know what it's like, right? So they were out there marching and protesting and fighting alongside with, Mexicanos, right? So it's like they were a part of the Chicano movement. So how are you going to try to leave them out of the Chicano conversation? Like, so they're good for the assistance, they're good for the help, they're good for when you need them. But then when it's like embracing them as a part of it, you're going to say no? They don't deserve that? They weren't out there fighting alongside of you? That is ridiculous. That is one of the most ridiculous things I have ever heard. So they're only good for this, right? No different than how America seen immigrants good for war, but not for citizenship. They're good to die for you guys, but not to be a citizen. That is just ridiculous, bro. Ignorance in society doesn't only apply to a certain group, right? But seems to be spreading out quite evenly, right? Even amongst our own. Because you have Chicanos throughout, not just here in California, but also in Arizona, Texas, Las Vegas, Oregon, and so many other different places, Kansas City and everything, right? In Northern California as well, right? There are Chicanos too, right? Where Cesar Chavez is coming from, right? Cesar Chavez being one of the, activists, right? Out of many, who was leading, the charge along with the Brown Berets and several others, right? and creating, the war cry, the chant, the flags, and all of that, right? Because the huelga bird in itself is not a norteño thing. Well, it is a norteño thing, but I'm saying like it's not. It wasn't created by norteños, and it was not used as a gang symbol. It was the flag that the farmers union, represented, right? The chicanos, the minorities, the raza were using the huelga bird in the flag, right? And obviously huelga means strike. For those who were wondering, huelga means strike. And it's the bird, so because the strike was the chant that they would say, right? So that's where that comes, from. That's why they call it the huelga bird, right? Now I don't know. The norteños might have a different definition and stuff for their gangster roots to it, right? But at least over here, it's that's what it is. So in here in Southern California, you have murals that have huelga birds. You have homies that have huelga birds tattooed on them, because you have to keep this in mind. It's a Chicano thing, and a lot of people are prideful in being Chicanos, not just being gang members from their barrios, because they are raza, you know what I mean? And they take pride in that, right? So you have a lot of individuals that take pride in the whole Chicano culture in itself, and that were out there protesting and marching alongside, farmers and, everyday folks. Because these marches were not marches of gang members. They were farmers, college students, regular workers, different minorities, teachers, and anybody who felt, discriminated against that were Chicanos. And not even just, raza, but also, you had other minorities that were in there also, helping, like Filipinos and etc., right? So you had several different, but overall, I guess, quote unquote, what people say illegals, right? That they don't see that they're Americans, right? So these individuals understand the struggles, the battles, and everything like that. Now, that in itself, like I said, just because they're prideful and they're gang members, like, they're all about their values, but they're gang members, right? But even though that's how they dress, and, they say that they're Chicano, it has nothing to do with the Chicano movement and Chicano culture in itself, right? To confuse Cortezes and Ben Davis and all these as, quote unquote Chicano, because that's not what Chicano is. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, all these people are Chicano. They're not gang affiliated. You don't see them with Cortezes and Ben Davis. And you see some pictures of the mistreatment that the raza, because it wasn't even just the Chicano marches in itself, or the farmers union, or the zoot suits, or the injustices that were happening in the frontera right there in Texas, right? But throughout, and not only just even, like I said, in the West, but also in the East, right? Like New York, like Chicago, and areas like that, right? Who were also having their protests and marches and all of that too, because it wasn't just affecting like these little states or whatever, but it was affecting wherever the raza was, right? So the raza was uniting and banding and fighting, right? For the rights of Latinos or Chicanos, you know what I mean? But obviously Chicano meaning, your family comes from, comes from Mexico, right? But you could include, South America and everything, because it was all one. We were all the same. We were all one people before they drew lines, right? Because those lines are imaginary. What's Guatemala, El Salvador, Mexico? That shit's all imaginary. People put those lines there before it was the Mexican Empire. It was a whole. People then, drew lines, right? And broke off. And now, this is El Salvador, that's Guatemala. But it used to be all one whole Mexican Empire. So for people to say that they're not our raza, they're not our people, they don't get a claim Chicano. That's why I always say they're all raza, they're all Chicanos, in my opinion, because they understand the struggle, the battles. They understand what it is to be Chicano, mistreated against, fighting and rallying for our rights of our people, our brown people. You know what I mean? So this has nothing to do with gangs, and gang banging, Cortezes and fucking bandanas, red or blue, or even brown for that matter, bandanas. It's nothing to do with gangs and bandanas and all that. Yes, they label it Chicano rap. Yes, these individuals are Chicanos, but they're Chicano gang members. That's a whole different thing from being Chicano. They just happen to be gang members that are Chicano. You get what I'm saying? So, although they may think that they're representing the Chicano culture, they're really not. Because that's not what it is to be Chicano. I think they got it twisted, or maybe they were misinformed, right? Like I said, because they were probably fans of Chicano rap, right? And the Stilo and all of that, right? And they, since it's called Chicano rap and these individuals are throwing Chicano in there, they misconstrued what they thought Chicano was. And not just them, but even now, younger generation confuse that too, right? Like, oh no, I'm not Chicano, I'm not no gangster. Like, what does that have to do with being in a gang or being a gangster? It's not the same thing. People are misinformed. You know what I mean? Because that has nothing to do with being a gangster or with gangs. You know what I mean? Now you're insulting all these individuals who are, law-abiding citizens who were out there for the greater good, for greater education for our youth, for better jobs for our raza, to have a better life in America. Because now you're confusing that. It's like you're labeling all of these people criminals and no good hooligans and drug addicts and drug sellers and and all this and that. When they're not. They were hardworking, Chicanos, pues, Mexican Americans, Latinos, however you want to say it, whatever you want to call it. The raza. You know what I mean? Excuse me. Because, like I said, there was a lot of injustice. But overall, that's just, my opinion on, what do I think about, the Chicano culture, I guess, being represented in other, countries like Japan and Philippines and all that. It's just that that's not what Chicano is, right? I get it. They don't mean no harm by it and stuff like that, but they're just not, I guess, they're not recognizing the right things, right? They're paying homage to something in which it isn't, right? But overall, that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Leave it in the comments. I'm Shadow. We out.